And we're live for episode 161 of Trek Live. How you doing this morning, Dan?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to get back into kind of our bread and butter topics, which is one of those topics is guess each other. So I'm really excited for today. So, yeah.
Yeah, likewise. This is one of my favorite sort of recurring conversation topics. I like that we found, I think I probably say this every time, but I love that we found a different way to do the top five thing. Like, it kind of incorporates a fresh angle on talking about our favorites. There are great shows out there. Trek Ranks probably being the most obvious one that plays with the top five list format. And we love that show. And we wanted to find our own sort of
spin on it.
With that kind of our own spin on that. So we're going to try to guess each other's five favorite new era Star Trek characters. So that's
correct me if I'm wrong. I think the last guess each other's we did, or one of the last episodes we did with guess each other's kind of format, was guess each other's new era. I think just shows, wasn't it? Episodes. Sorry. So yeah, it's kind of a succession here, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I think this will be a good, having just come off of, that was it 23 straight weeks of new Trek and a whole lot of it in 2020. As a whole, Picard, Lower Decks, and season 3 of Discovery. A lot of this stuff is pretty fresh. There's a good bit of it to kind of digest and think about at this point, and I'm eager to see what we come up with. Trying to guess your list was not easy, as it rarely is these days, and even putting together my own was a real challenge for a lot of different reasons that I'm sure we'll talk about as we get into the meat and potatoes of the topic. But before we do all that, as we are wont to do, where are you on your rewatch?
So I watched 2 episodes this week. You guys know that I'm going through Deep Space Nine, so I watched Sons of Moog, I believe, and Bar Association. So 2 different episodes in their own right.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good example of Swiss Army knife idea that one episode can be this, and then the next episode can be almost completely different. So I liked both of these episodes. Sons of Moog was definitely a tough watch, heavy-handed episode. Deals with some Klingon culture stuff that I have problems with, but it's tough with it being a cultural thing, I guess, with the Klingons. And then the Bar Association is kind of lighter-hearted, kind of Ferengi. I don't know. It's a good episode, I think.
It's a romp, but it's about, I think, things that we deal with all the time in our daily life, or at least our political life and our social life, culturally, with the labor rights and what does it mean to work and all that stuff.
Yeah, but it takes kind of a lighthearted approach to something.
Of course,
like that. So
yeah, it's satirical and it's a comedy, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
It's definitely good medicine after Sons of Moog, which I agree with you is really heavy, really tough pill to swallow. The Klingon cultural ritual suicide stuff is tough to take for a lot of people, and I think some of the decisions they make with Moog are controversial. That's an episode that I think breeds a lot of different opinions. Some people are into it because it feels big and it's a big character story, and it puts Worf in an uncomfortable position. It really tests him, and it feels big because it's sort of moving forward the story of a recurring character that goes back to TNG and it's paying off some story threads that date back years. But others struggle a lot, I think, with where that character winds up and the sort of final decision and the final solution to the problem.
The reset button thing
is kind of and that's always been my biggest struggle with it. The way they resolve it sometimes feels kind of like a cop out to me, but I respect that it's an episode that works for a lot of people at the same time. I like Bar Association a lot. It's grown on me over the years. I think it's pretty good in the grand scheme of things when you compare it to other Ferengi comedies.
Yes,
exactly. I think it's in the upper tier. I would say better than Prophet and Lace, better than Frankie love songs or some episodes coming later that I think this is a better effort than. So good stuff. You're like more than halfway through season 4. I think at this point, so cool. Yeah, so for me, since the last time we did this, I think the last thing I'd watched last week was Generations, which we talked a little bit about in our rewatch recap last week. Since then, I've watched Fascination. I watched that last Sunday, which is a really tough one for me, one of my least favorites. I have a tough time getting through that one. Some interesting direction. Avery Brooks using like really long tracking shots and kind of really moving the camera through the promenade, like really fluid camera movements from like the lower level up to the upper level and kind of moving around, following different characters around. There's some neat production things going on with it, but it's pretty rough, I think. I don't think a lot of the humor lands with a thud, and the Loxana Troy thing feels pretty tired and old at this point and removed from, what made it important in the Next Generation. And it's something worth going back to in that show. Never feels totally natural to me in Deep Space Nine when they bring her back. So that's a misfire. But then I watched Past Tense, which I think is an absolute classic and gets better every time, and it's more timely all the time. And it's I mentioned on Twitter, I think the guest cast there's like this big ensemble of guests in that. The security guard who sort of turns throughout the episode. The African American actress who plays the sort of social worker intake person in the camp is really good, memorable performance. Yeah, there's a lot of that. The bad dude, I forget his name. Granted, I just watched it yesterday. The guy who's like instigates the whole hostage situation. The ghost. That actor I think is really good. Really
Loose Cannon.
And, of course, Loose Cannon. Like there's some really memorable character one-offs in that episode. In addition to, I think, a really strong Avery Brooks performance as well. So love that. And maybe most importantly, I got into Voyager. I watched Caretaker and Parallax. Now I'm into back into the alternating shows with pretty commonly going to be like one episode of DS9, one episode of Voyager, and kind of like flipping back and forth for the foreseeable future. So looking forward to getting into that whole rhythm and flow of 90s era Trek.
Nice.
All right, I think that'll do it for rewatch recap, and look forward to keeping going with that. But let's get into the topic at hand, which is our personal ranks and our guesses of each other's favorite new era Star Trek characters. So the way I would look at this is these are characters that are going to come from Discovery, Picard, and Lower Decks. Right? Do you agree with that?
Yes.
We're on the same page there?
Yeah. TV shows. Because I think maybe Kelvin Timeline could get lumped in with quote-unquote new era.
You could.
But I think we're sticking to television, and I don't know if short treks count in that as well. I don't have a short trek character on mine, spoiler alert. So I just want to point that out there. If someone does, that's totally fine. Anything produced in the new era, quote unquote, is eligible.
It's eligible, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, like our process and if we had any thoughts kind of coming away from thinking about this as a topic. Speaking for myself real quick, I can just tell you that like my biggest thing that I kind of struggled with, I think Discovery looms really large for me.
That was my point as well.
Yeah. Having 3 seasons of that in comparison to 10 episodes of the other 2 shows feels a little bit like an unfair advantage to me when I'm trying to think of these 3 shows kind of on a level playing field as far as like favorite characters, most fleshed out, most interesting, most there as far as things to think about and reflect on. But I tried hard to incorporate a little bit of other shows in my list. I could have gone. I certainly the easy way out probably for me, if I'm being brutally honest, would be to just go 5 Disco characters. But I didn't do that, and I feel good about that. I feel good that I stretched myself. I forced myself to spend time thinking about those other shows, and I came away with a more varied list than I thought. What about you?
I had the exact same struggle. I didn't work as hard just because it's really the truth. It's really, I think that these, just because, and it's I don't think it's because, I mean, I guess it does play a part, but because Discovery does have 3 seasons, the Discovery characters do feel more fleshed out. So I have more Discovery characters on my list. So, but this whole thing is kind of a product of, this will change because these seasons hopefully will get, or these shows will get more seasons and the characters will get fleshed out. This will change. So this is for me right now, and I think these are just my characters, my favorite characters, no matter what. I'm not trying to make it the fair, even kind of representation from each series. No, these are my favorite from New Era. So
yeah, I guess for me, I'll like rephrase a little bit and just say that I feel like this is an accurate representation of my feelings as of today as well. And I want to, there are a character or characters, I won't get into too much detail on like how many from what show until we actually get into it. But I think, I don't think I force-fed anything into the list. Like the character or characters from other shows that appear feel like they belong there for me, in my actual true feelings. So, yeah, I'm eager to see where we go with this. Cyber Honey's in the room on YouTube and mentions another point that's worth maybe talking about, how we felt about this. She says she took one classic character and put him on the list because he was portrayed by a new actor. One thing with Discovery is there are characters, like, did you, without getting into detail, like, did you put any thought into that? Did you think of characters that are not necessarily new characters, but
yes,
like, they were involved in your decision making?
Like yes, because I think there's a natural progression, and I think that it fits within the universe, and I think it just adds more layers to that character. So in 2 instances in particular. So yeah, I definitely, that definitely came to mind when I was working through my list.
Yeah, I agree. Cyber Honey also says this is a topic that should be revised in a couple of years, probably be revised in a couple of years. There's no doubt about that. And to be honest, I think, without speaking too much for Dan, I think, speaking for myself, if I sat down and I watched, like, over the next 2 weeks, Discovery, Picard, and Lower Decks again, in 2 weeks, it would probably be worth revising this because I would probably do something different.
Hopefully, at the end of the show, I want to revise my list because I think we're going to get into talking about characters and things, and so it should be fun.
Exactly. Let's do our guesses first. Why don't you talk about your guesses for me, and then I'll do my guesses for you. Talk about them, and then we'll do our real lists, unless you have a different approach.
Okay. So which side? Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna put mine under Dan's guess on the if I can.
Yeah. Okay. Me too.
Try to do some producer
behind the
stuff
scenes
here.
stuff,
Yeah.
producer stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Are you typing them in?
I am gonna type them in. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I know I didn't get this one right.
Do you want to read them as well, like as you go, and then I can?
Yeah. So
populate them.
So for my guess for Bill, my fifth guess for him
All right.
is Captain Pike.
Pike. Okay.
4 is Picard.
Four is Picard. Okay.
3 is
There's an interesting discussion to be had there.
Giorgio.
Okay. Giorgio. What do you have for 2?
For 2, I have Saru.
And number 1, if I had to guess, I think
This Burnham.
probably have that right.
Yeah.
All right. Good. And then for me, you ready for mine?
I am not ready. Just give me
Okay.
a few more seconds here.
Sure. So the biggest point of discussion that I'll kind of just touch on here that I did factor into my sort of process thinking about this is what to do with Jean-Luc Picard. Like, does he's the one character that, to be honest, I kind of put in a corner and said I'm not going to play with that because
Okay.
there are other characters who are returning from Discovery mostly, who are portrayed by a new actor, have a slightly different spin on what they bring to the table. I had no problem going there and putting them in the same, ballpark and arena as new characters introduced by these shows. Picard, I struggled with kind of including there because I felt like I have such a difficult time thinking about Picard in Star Trek Picard without bringing the baggage of the TNG history and development and stuff with me into that. So if I was willing to do that, he would certainly be on the list and he would be at the top probably. But yeah, for the purposes of trying to put it on, making it as fair as possible for the other characters, I kind of made him the one exception, and I was curious to see what you would do. I didn't know, we didn't talk about it in advance and intentionally like sidebar him and put him off and say we can't choose him or anything like that. And he's a very valid choice because his character arc and his progression, I think what you were kind of alluding to a few minutes ago in Picard, is different. Like, he is a different guy in Star Trek Picard. So we may or may not end up talking about that more depending on who ends up on your list and how he emerges as we keep going. Can I give you mine now? You ready for?
Are you? This is your guess for me.
This is my guess for you.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So my number 5 guess for you is Rios from Star Trek Picard.
Okay.
My number 4 guess for you is going to be Saru from Discovery. My number 3 guess for you is going to be Gabriel Lorca from the first season of Discovery.
Okay.
2, I'm going to go with Pike. And 1, I'm going to go with Burnham, although I'm not 100% confident in that. I feel like I might be going a little high there. I wouldn't be surprised if she's on the list, but not all the way at the top. I'm eager to hear what you actually did.
Whoa.
So I have
yeah,
1 Picard and 4 Disco characters. So we both went pretty heavy Discovery, and that was probably a good instinct for what we're going to do based on what we said at the beginning of this. So.
Okay.
Right. So I guess without getting into our actual lists yet, I kind of like when we do this. Like, let's talk about how many roundabout did we get? Like, are we way off, or are we close?
You're close, at least for me. So your guess, the order is different, but you got 3 of my 5.
Okay.
Yes.
You also got 3 of my 5.
Okay.
Find it interesting. We each guessed 1 Picard and 4 Disco, if I'm counting correctly here. Yeah. And no Lower Decks.
Okay.
Okay. Let's do your actual list and populate that so we can get everything up on the board.
Okay.
Get through the producery, like populating the stuff.
And then I can
let's
find
get into
my
the
top.
conversation. We'll really go into it.
Sorry for any people listening on the podcast feed. This would be one of those instances where you should come over to the YouTube channel, and because we do have some graphics coming along, but we'll do our best to kind of run through our list kind of at the end, like we always do. So, so my 5, is Lorca.
Which
you guessed.
I guessed. I felt pretty comfortable he was going to be somewhere.
Yeah.
I know you were a huge fan at the time, and it was a long time ago now, so that kind of left me a little concerned. Like, so many years ago, there's so many new characters since. Is that going to fade? But I feel good that I stuck to my guns and kept them on.
It's just he is one of the characters that challenge the captaincy type of character. He's like this anti-hero that really changed the name of the game, I guess, for as far as person who sits in the captain's seat. So I have to put him on my list. This next one is probably a little bit of surprise for some people, but it is Cleveland Booker.
Interesting. I would not have guessed that.
New entry onto the scene. I really loved his. I can get into him a little bit more once I finish all this producer stuff, but really loved him in this past season. So I had to put him on my list. New entry.
Awesome. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have guessed. Okay.
My number 3 pick, 7 of 9.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And this kind of falls into what Bill kind of talked about with Picard. I didn't see it that way. I think she's got a great progression. I think she brings some new stuff to her character. Technically, if we're talking about a new character in the new era, that's not really how I saw it. I just thought characters in the new era. Who do you like? I like the change. I think she's she just kind of fits into. I think when she got back, I think this is what she would do. She would get out of. She always fought for the underdog, and this to me is a great progression for her character, and so she's on my list, even though she is technically a recurring character, not recast, but a recurring character. Mm-hmm. My number 2, it's Saru. and that this changed this season. I think, the progression from season 1 to season 3 is clearly evident, and it's been talked about a lot, obviously. But you can't deny that this progression is one of the best progressions that we've seen, I think, in Star Trek. So these 1 and 2 could probably go back and forth after this season. My number 1, obviously, if you guys are keeping track at home, is Burnham. My favorite character of the new era is Michael Burnham. So, yes.
Awesome. A lot of surprises. I mean, I should have seen 7 of 9 coming, and I don't know why I didn't have it in mind, because she is awesome, and like everything you said is true. I think giving her fresh new things to do that are both like it's just kind of like inherently surprising to be seeing her again, but like what she's doing and where she ends up is not surprising.
It's not surprising
to me. Like
exactly.
That's the beauty of it.
Yep.
Like she winds up exactly kind of where you would think she would. She was not gonna conform and like fit in cleanly to like the Starfleet hierarchy, infrastructure. Like it just wasn't gonna happen. Like I never saw her as somebody who was gonna just like slide right in and become an officer and be a compliant, happy-go-lucky Starfleet officer.
Yeah.
Doing the Fenris Ranger thing out in the frontier, patrolling for, chaos and, trying to keep order where there is no order. That's exactly her. Like, that's perfect for what she would be doing, I think, in this time, in this organizational structure of the universe and the galaxy. Like, it's just, it all adds up. So I think that's a really cool choice, and I kind of regret my take. I guess because I went right to, what am I going to do with Picard? Like, do I put him on here or not? When I kind of decided not to do that, I kind of, I guess, stopped thinking about not just even 7 in Picard, but Riker, Troy, like these old favorites that appear in Picard, either as guests or recurring or main characters. The Picard decision, I guess, kind of shut out a lot of thought from me for including characters like that. But I love that you picked her.
Yeah,
Book. I'm really eager to talk about Book too, because
I know he's only has 1 season or had 1 season so far. I just, it was one of those characters that kind of came out of the blue. Like, I feel like because of Michael Burnham's love interests in the past 2 seasons, I really wasn't in love with. I kind of wrote off that character off, and then it was a really pleasant surprise where this character has such a rich, deep backstory that really fascinates me. So I do like Book. I definitely bumped Rios or Pike off the list. If we were doing this last season, I think one of those 2 would have made it on my list, and that's no knock to Rios or Pike. But I think Booker just felt really different and very interesting, definitely of the time. He feels like a kind of a what we think a Federation member would be, but in this destroyed post-apocalyptic world, which is fantastic. So, yeah.
Love it. I thought of that Book. Book was definitely on my sort of radar. I think he got really, really strong as the season went on. I liked his dynamic with Burnham. I liked where he pushed Burnham, and the sort of necessity of having a character who kind of grounds this new time that we find ourselves in, sort of being the liaison to the real world of what we and our characters are kind of walking into, makes him really key, really important. And David Ajala is tremendous, I think. Just dripping with
great
charisma.
Performance. Yeah,
for sure. Burnham and Saru, I'm sure we're going to talk about, because they are kind of perched at the top of multiple iterations that we have up here with guesses and real. So we'll get into them. I'll put mine up so we can kind of talk about kind of holistically everything and move from there. My number 5 is somebody who has not been mentioned yet, and that is Beckett Mariner from Lower Decks. the sort of protagonist or one of the protagonists of that show, and I'll talk about that. Yeah, I think the thing that makes that show work for me, being a comedy, being an animated show, is that there's some actual like meat to chew on, and the stuff that she's dealing with her identity, the kind of person she wants to be, her comfort zone, coming from a family of Starfleet officers, and the pressure that brings, and choices that she's made in the past kind of haunting her. Like all these things are such rich, meaty things to chew on. It gives the show like this added degree of weight. And my favorite episode of the series so far is Crisis Point, the holodeck.
Yeah.
Big romp
So
in back into the season, and there's this great scene in that where she's fighting herself on the holodeck, like fighting the holodeck recreation of her in her own program, and that to me was like such classic Star Trek stuff. Like these two, like the yin and yang of a person, like physically being put in a position to have to like battle it out and talk through problems and reflect on themselves. So she made it. I really think she's the key. I love Boimler too. I think he brings a lot of relatability to the show, and is the kind of officer that we don't get a lot of time with and a lot of development with in the other shows. But I think Mariner's the thing that really gives that show its juice. My number 4 is a character that probably would not have appeared on this list before season 3 of Discovery. Dr. Culver is on mine, largely powered by his role, his slightly more juiced, more active participation in a lot of the stories in season 4. I think in season 3, I think he really adds to that ensemble. I think he's walking, talking human empathy in so many of those scenes, and I think the story of the season is ripe for his involvement. Coming back from trauma, literally coming back from death. Being really a lost soul and trying to have to find himself again. He's already been through what these characters are all going through now. Like what he was dealing with in season 2 is what everybody's dealing with in season 3, and he's a doctor and he's equipped to help these people, and he does. And it's beautiful and perfect, and I love every scene he's on screen. There are like little moments like him trying when he's on the away team on the ship with Burnham, and just like every word out of his mouth feels classic Star Trek. Like he just is a he's a great Star Trek character in my book. Number 3, I'm going with Pike. In terms of like rejuvenating a character who is kind of iconic and legendary, but with not a whole lot of there, in the grand scheme of things, compared to all these other Star Trek legendary, legacy
Picard,
characters,
right?
they call them.
Yeah.
There's so much meat on the bones on a lot of these other characters, and comparatively, Pike, we have the menagerie and the cage and
doesn't have much
little
baggage.
throwaway lines of dialogue. No, there's an archetype there, but there's a lot of room for fleshing out and growth and building on it. And I think what Anson Mount was able to do by honoring what we knew Captain Pike was from what little we saw of him, but to, breathe a whole new life into this existing character was a big achievement, and gave a lot of personality to season 2 of Discovery as well. I think really carried that season. My number 2 is Saru. No surprise there. And my number 1, of course, as anybody who knows me and has talked to me in
Burnham.
the last few years, is Michael Burnham. So a lot of consistency at 1 and 2 on these lists. And just to kind of echo what you were saying, I think Saru, maybe isn't at number 2 pre-season 3. I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he's down a couple spots. But I think his growth in season 3, and putting him in the role of the captaincy, and really delivering on the momentum that was started all the way back in season 1 in episodes like Choose Your Pain, where he's forced into the captain's chair and kind of uncomfortable with it, unsure of himself, and struggling with confidence. it's really nice to see him in episodes like Far From Home and the Sanctuary, even like where he's in command in these like crisis situations, combat situations, and just being totally in command. I think his growth is perfect. And Burnham, I mean, I think the fact that she's won on all 4 of these across the board iterations, we are, clearly she's a controversial character for all kinds of reasons. If you go out into the forest of the internet and
Trek BBS
watch Star Trek Discovery stuff and message boards and Twitter and all these places, you're going to hear all kinds of different things about Michael Burnham, good, bad, and in between. I've been taken with her since the beginning. I think getting the opportunity to dive into the head of a character who has not yet arrived in the Star Trek universe and have that be the linchpin of the show, the driving force of the show, the thing that really moves the show from beginning to middle to end, has been a really refreshing new approach. I think many of these other shows, Kirk, Picard, Cisco, Janeway, like they all have their moments and they have their building blocks that they have to execute on, and there are things that are happening to those characters at the beginning of those shows that are, there's development that goes on with all of them, Archer, but they all feel like characters who have largely kind of become the person they're going to be. Like they are at the top. They've achieved a lot in their careers. They are at the top of the chain of command. They're, Burnham feels like a good answer to that. She makes mistakes. She learns from those mistakes. She redeems herself. She needs a second chance. She needs third chances, and she delivers on those chances. And I think that's an important message for a lot of people. I think Tom Paris is great for a lot of the same reasons. Those sorts of notes are what resonates with me about that character. That, poster child for like people deserve opportunities and will surprise you and will capitalize a lot of the time when they're given those opportunities.
I think she has just one of the best, just glow up, what term you want, progression. Like she was like kind of at the top of her game, like second, and she was not CEO, but the second in command. Fell down, hit rock bottom, came up, ups and downs through this whole 3 seasons. That's a lot of character development. So I couldn't agree more with you, what you said there. So
yeah, and it's one of the things that I think Star Trek is kind of always dealing with too, is like this battle between intellectual, like book smart knowledge, having the goods on that side of things, but also having the ability to relate to people and have that human connection that drives decision making. That's what the original series was about, and was like really built into the DNA of that show. But I think all of the shows sort of have that built into their own sort of exploration of humanity. All these characters are smart. Like they all have that like level of training and education and just natural ability to like do this or that, but that's not the full game. And that's one of the things Burnham's always dealing with too. Yeah, she's got this Vulcan training. She's got this. She's brilliant from the book side of things. She knows what it takes to be in these kinds of positions. But the knockdowns she has to sustain, the overcoming trauma that she has to deal with things that happened in her past as a child, losing her parents, and dealing with Klingons, and how to respond to these things, and how to deal with people around you, and how to all these things are real life things that I think people struggle with and need to reckon with in their own journeys, and seeing that reflected in the main character in this show, I think has been one of the reasons I love it so much. Are there any surprises on my list?
I'm surprised you went with Mariner, but now that you kind of explained your reasonings behind it, it makes sense. And I find myself again I'm changing my list, maybe my top 10, because I do really like that, what you said about Mariner. So I tinkered too much on my guess. I was gonna put Culver on there for you because I knew season 3 Culver had just like breathed new life, literally into that character. And then I knew 1 and 2 pretty rock solid, but it was just that 3, 4, 5 for me that I couldn't nail down. So
interesting. Okay.
yeah.
So I guess for you, Rios and Lorca, who do not appear on your lists.
Lorca does. And Pike does not.
Oh, Lorca does.
Yeah.
Pike does not.
Yeah.
Pike does not.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, were they? How far into the decision making did they get? They make cuts. Were they?
Rios was probably the one that was the closest to getting in. Pike is probably that latter half of 10.
Okay.
Just Lorca over Pike because, again, I talked about it when I typed my answer in, but Lorca changed my view of this anti-hero type of captain that we can now have. Because before, it was, when I looked at the captain's chair, it was either a good or bad. It was very black and white, but Lorca really changed that, my perspective on the captain's chair. This kind of gray type of character that walks that really fine line, which I think is will stand the test of time. That's not to knock Pike again. I really do like that character. Definitely breathes new life. Adds to again a character that we've had seen a little bit. But Rios, man, that was probably my toughest cut because his character is such a trope that we've seen before, but kind of in a new light, right? A disgruntled, because we don't realize how tough it is to be a Starfleet officer and what they have to go through. So I like to see that, okay, he's gone through some stuff, and it doesn't kind of turn out like the typical Star Trek trope. He gets out of Starfleet, like he just kind of goes his own way instead of whatever trope you want to do.
Right.
Disgruntled Starfleet.
The whole Starfleet.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole Starfleet experience kind of chewed him up and spit him out. Like he really was broken up by the direction of Starfleet at the time. I think he got into it for the right reasons and had all the pieces to be a successful Starfleet officer, and was perfectly capable of having a really successful career. But I think the choices that Starfleet had to make and chose to make, because of the backstory of the show, all the stuff with the Romulans, and that pushed him away and caused things around him to happen. Like it wasn't just a matter of like he disagreed with the politics or the policy of Starfleet. It was the places that it took people around him, like where it sent his captain, that was sort of his idol, and his like when I think of mine, it's Picard. Like when I think of like I didn't serve in Starfleet, obviously I don't live in that universe, but I mean, like when I think of my idol, the person I would want to aspire to be, and who's sort of my mentor kind of a person, it would be him. And like for Rios, his guy like that, his mentor, his hero, got destroyed by these directions that Starfleet had to or made decisions to go into, and there's tangible fallout for him in that. And like you said, I think to see that actually play out and see the fallout of that and what that does to a person is the reason I think that character is so successful.
Because I think we get to see these characters on these flagships, these great things that they do in Starfleet and all these things. But it's nice to see the other side of the coin where, okay, things in Starfleet aren't always happy-go-lucky. Like this is a broken man, and I really do like that about the character. Yeah.
I agree. And I remember feeling concerned maybe a little bit in the early days, hearing about the character, that he was just going to be kind of like a Han Solo-ish, like roguish ex-Starfleet captain or ex-Starfleet officer, and he's just going to kind of be a badass, old Starfleet guy.
Yeah.
And so much more complex than that. Like when Picard says Starfleet's in your bones, like the way the ship is like operating,
immaculate.
It's immaculate. This is a Starfleet. It's in you.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't hate Starfleet. He hates what Starfleet has like become. Like he's got the old Starfleet in him, just like Picard does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he's my favorite character from Picard for sure. I think of the newly introduced pieces of that ensemble, he's my favorite. And would have been the closest to making my list.
6 for me. 6 or 7.
Awesome. Cool. For you guessed Giorgio and Picard as the two that don't make mine. Picard, we kind of talked about. He's sort of an anomaly. I could have done it, and he could have ended up really high on this list. But I chose to kind of sideline that. Giorgio, I think, has grown on me a lot. Like I think Giorgio as a character in the first season was fascinating to me. I think the second season, when she's in Section 31 and she's a little bit more...
Got a little one-dimensional there, a little bit, you think?
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. I think that's where she kind of loses a little bit of the luster for me. Okay. And then in Season 3, I do think they find ways to reintroduce some interesting aspects.
Okay.
And I am fond of where they take that character in Season 3.
Yeah.
I think they really found ways to do some inventive things there. So she's up there. I love her in the pilot, the first 2 episodes as actual Giorgio. In
Prime
Giorgio. Battle Fire Stars.
Yeah.
Prime Giorgio. Fantastic. And I love her when she's in the Mirror Universe, like when you first meet her as the Empress, the Emperor. I think she's great there. So, certainly in the conversation, and Michelle Yeoh is performances favorite actors
so
in the show.
Yeah.
She's way up there. She brings a lot to the table for the show. So definitely a fan there. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I don't think so.
Anything sticking out? Okay.
I think we hit on everything.
Real quick to, I guess, go to the chat. I know Cyber Honey has kind of revealed her list. 5 for her was Admiral Cornwell, who I loved as well. Very active in Season 1 and pretty active in Season 2 as well.
Yeah.
4 was Sarek, who is also a really strong recurring character. Again, especially I think in Season 1.
Yeah.
Then 3, Philippa Georgiou, and she mentions a 2. I'm not sure exactly who it was. It must have been thrown out there while we were talking about one of them. And then Michael Burnham was her number 1. So Cyber Honey, let us know who your number 2 was. And then Jimmy 77 is also in the room. If you want to share your 5, be happy to read them and talk about anything that stands out. Burnham is definitely the hot topic. I'm very eager to. One of the things we always kind of talk about it, like Trek After Dark, so we're just kind of casually shooting the is the sort of ebb and flow of new Star Trek whenever it happens to be new. Like we always talk about, I feel like, Deep Space Nine was controversial in its day, Voyager was controversial in its day, Enterprise was very hot topic, hated it,
very divisive.
It was new,
yeah,
very divisive in their time, but time seems to
heal
soften
all
some
wounds.
of those.
Yeah.
I hope that some more people who may have discounted or didn't care for it at the beginning give Discovery as a whole, but the Burnham character especially, a second look. As time goes on, some of the wounds of CBS All Access and such are maybe not are not as prevalent. I think that would be nice to see.
Yeah.
Any other final thoughts?
Do not believe so.
Okay. Cyber Honey says her number 2 is Gabriel Burnham, portrayed by Sonia Stone, the mother. Okay. All right. ER makes its craziest theories. Has their top 5. They have Spock, and 7 of 9 as 5 and 4. Pike. So 3 returning characters, a couple recast, 1.
Those to me count, but yeah.
Mariner number 2 and Giorgio number 1. Fascinating.
Nice. It's a good list.
Very much so.
Yeah.
All right. I think that'll about do it. We're at about an hour. We started a little bit late, but we're coming up on 11 Eastern. This is definitely, like we said, something that we could come back to and talk about again after rewatches, after more seasons. I think, one of the inherent things to kind of just drive home is, Picard and Lower Decks, we're dealing with 10 episodes. The Discovery's got much more of a rich, backlog and ensemble of episodes and ups and downs for the characters. So this is certainly a moment in time, not a definitive.
Yes, exactly.
This will stand the test forever. Like that. This is not necessarily the case. So,
yeah, I'm really kind of blown away looking back at all the characters. I think they've done a really good job of kind of building new characters and making them really interesting, and it just goes to show that some of these characters that we list today, they only had a season, and they made that much of an impact on us. I really do think they've done a great job of not just casting, because all the actors are always great, but the setting up the characters, which is sometimes a tough thing to do. So I think they've done a great job in this new era.
Agreed, absolutely, and it makes me want to go back and I've been fighting the urge to take the dive.
It's gonna set Bill back, set Bill over.
And Lower Decks too. Honestly, that's something I could do in a day with the 20-minute run times, 20-25 minutes. So yeah, we'll have to revisit maybe in a couple of years when there's more new and new shows. Strange New World is going to introduce all kinds of new characters. And, yeah. So
that about wraps it up.
Yeah, that'll do it. Thank you, everybody who was in the YouTube or Periscope arenas watching or watching later. You can find it on the podcast feed as well. And as always, I'll pitch Discord. We have a Discord server if you want to network and connect with, positive, friendly, welcoming Star Trek fans. You can shoot me a DM on Twitter at TrekFan4387.
Yeah.
I'll give you an invitation. You can join the server. There are channels in there where people share what episodes they're watching, what books they're reading, what podcasts they're listening to. There's an off-topic, there's general, there's just places to hang out and talk. And every so often we have Trek After Dark, which is a casual group call where people can participate on video, on mic, or just watch and type along with the conversation. We watch episodes, we talk about whatever we have going on, whatever's new and exciting in the world of Star Trek at the time. We try to do it every few months. We just did it last week. It was a lot of fun. I'm sure we'll have another one, in the next few, probably sometime in May, I'm guessing. Hopefully. So definitely reach out if you would like to join and be a part of that.
Yeah, so just to echo what Bill is saying, the discussion does not and will not stop here. So Twitter, I think, is the best one to kind of keep that going right now, and Discord. We'll be back next week to talk about more Trek. See you guys next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.